Yo, what's going on? It's your main man, Rick the Dawn, and I do apologize for taking so long to get to this last episode. Life was happening in full speed, and the day I finally took a moment just to watch it. So I'm gonna sit down for an hour. It's so hard for me to just sit down in one spot for an hour without doing something. So that's kind of what happened. It's like I don't want to sit down in one spot for 1 hour and not do anything at all but watch a TV. It don't feel like it's productive to me. But I got a duty to withhold, and I finally caught up everybody. And wow, what a great season this was. We know that Temptation Island has already been renewed. And that tells me one thing: Netflix is very impressed with the numbers that came back. And so am I. I am very impressed with this Netflix production. I've been watching Temptation Island since it first came out. And this was one of the better produced seasons. And wow, what about that finale? Every one of the bonfires was impressive. And yes, everything tied up very nicely. We begin with Brion and Shante. They both get to the bonfire. Brion is visibly remorseful. And if you don't know the structure of how this all works, Mark gives them three options. They can either leave with each other, leave by themselves, or leave with a new love. Brion chose to leave with Shante, and this was a very gutsy move on Brion's part. He went first. Typically, it's difficult for the person going first to try to figure out what the person's going to say. So you don't want to look like you're crazy by choosing to leave with that person, and then that person chooses to leave by themselves. So Brion had to take a risk, and he chose to leave with Shante. And all the chips were in Shantae's hand. It's funny because the entire season, you think that Brion has the leverage. It's basically like Shante needs to get with my program or she's going to be by herself. But man, if nothing else has happened in this season, the tables have turned. And in this case, all the chips, all the leverage was in Shantae's hand. She had all the power. Now, what threw me off a little bit was that Shante initially chose to leave by herself. You saw her visibly just going through this mental battle of, do I forgive Brion or do I go ahead and go out there and test the waters and see what's out there in the wilderness? And we always hear this when it comes to people who are in marriages or people who are in long-term relationships. The grass is not greener on the other side. You know, that's a big temptation for people that's in a long-term relationship. Should I leave what I already have and try and see what's out there? Is what I already have the best that I can bring in or the best that I can get? This is what torments a lot of people in relationships. Are they with the best male or female husband or wife spouse that's available to them, or is there better? And it reminds me of that game Deal or No Deal, where you have a case, and at the end of the game you have a decision to make. Do you keep your case, which you don't really know what the value is inside the case, or do you trade it with the dealer, for a chance at a higher value? That's what relationships are. And Shante was battling with that decision. Do I keep Brion, who is a cheater, but by way of his decision making in this particular process, he seems to be reformed. He seems to be remorseful. And I'll be honest with you, it was great to see Brion humbled, because when he came into this process, it was all about what Shante lacked. But by the end of this process, he realized that he was the one that was truly lacking. And what threw me off was Shante initially told Brion that she wanted to leave alone. And I felt so happy for her. I feel like, you know what? It's time for you to choose yourself. It's time for you to not jump into another relationship, but just understand that you are a beautiful person. You are a beautiful woman. And throughout this entire relationship, I get the sense that she hasn't been given her flowers. Brion, in my opinion, just didn't seem to appreciate Shante. And by the time it was all said and done, Shante reversed her decision, because she did ask Mark for a moment to be with herself. And she kind of had a breakdown moment where she was hugging the producer and I guess maybe even the director. And the director gave her some very strong advice. She told her to do what was best for her. And when she comes back to sit down with Brion, she changes her tune. And she tells Brion that she wants to give him grace. That's a very important word. Anytime that you're in a relationship and the other partner does something that is damaging or hurtful, you have a decision to make. You can either give them grace and say, hey, I forgive you. I do believe that you are remorseful. I do believe that this action was not indicative of who you are as a person. Or they have the opportunity, again, to leave and test the waters. And then in this case, Shante decided to give Brion some grace. Now, I did take it upon myself to look at their Instagrams to see if they're still going strong. And I am happy to report that Brion and Shante are still together. They're not very active on Instagram, which I think is a positive sign. I think, when it comes to a relationship, especially one that needs repair, it's always great to see that the two individuals are not posting nonstop and blah, blah, blah. So I thought that was pretty cool to see that they seem to be off the grid. Okay. Am I happy with this outcome? Man, a part of me was very, very much so rooting for Shante to leave the island alone. And here's what I really wanted. All right. It's not about me. First off, it's not about me. But I'll be honest with you. Here's what I wanted. I wanted Shante to leave the island by herself. And I'm not saying that I didn't want her to get back with Brion, because I did. But I wanted her to leave the island by herself. One, to teach Brion a lesson. Like, hey, you can't play with people's emotions. You can't play with people's feelings. And Shantae's feelings matter. So I wanted her to leave by herself to really drive that home. And then I wanted her to have some time by herself so that she was outside of this experience, this experiment, to really reflect on how she truly felt. I felt like she was under the microscope. I felt like Brion was burning a hole through her. And, I felt like she almost even felt intimidated. Like, hey, what do you want to do? I'm changed. I'm a different man. But it's like, yo, are you? This is a process that hasn't even ended yet. Like, literally, you just had a threesome like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Now I'm supposed to be right back in a relationship with you. So a part of me wanted Shante to go home by herself, have some time to be around her family, have some time to even go on a date or two. I don't know. Check her DMs, because I'm pretty sure anybody who watched Netflix and saw her and see how well she represented herself. I mean, the options have to have been numerous in terms of a new partner. So I wanted her to have some time away from Brion so that she can really digest what had just happened. But I'm still happy that they stayed together. I do believe that Brion has changed as a result of this experience. I did check his Instagram. He still seemed kind of out there. It's like mixed signals. In one instance, he seems to be reformed. But I still know a playboy or a F-boy when I see one, and I still see a hint of that there. And I'm like, man, I hope that he maintains this new perspective and realize just how important Shante is. Now, what scares me is because Shante did not choose to leave by herself, it's almost as if it reinforces what I think Brion thinks, is that Shante will never leave me no matter what I do. And I think that it's the only reason I wanted her to leave by herself, to really drive home to him like, hey, it's not that easy. It's not that simple. It's not just I'll come back to you no matter what you do, because that's what's reinforced by her not even giving him the opportunity to face the fire a little bit. So we'll see what happens. The next couple was very, very difficult. In fact, I'm going to skip one and just go to this one here. Ashley and Grant. Man, this was a tough Bonfire to watch. Oh my gosh, it was very difficult. And man, Grant was laying it down thick. He was laying it down thick. So Grant comes out, Ashley comes out, and Grant tries to get a hug from Ashley. And Ashley sticks to her guns. It's like, no, I've seen enough. I don't want anything to do with you, Grant. And Grant is visibly hurt. But man, I felt like Grant really started to gain some traction when Mark allowed him to speak. Now, if you don't know how the whole process worked, Mark allowed each of the participants, Ashley and Grant, to speak uninterruptedly. Then he allowed them to talk with each other and ask questions. And then they had to make their decision. And when Grant was able to speak without interruption, he was hitting all the right notes, okay? He noted that, hey, throughout this relationship, he had been trying to live up to this model or this mold that Ashley created. And he noted how her words were very belittling and how they made him feel. Because you got the sense that Ashley was ready to just dig into Grant and point out all of Grant's wrongdoings and flaws. But when Grant started to speak, it came from a space that was so passionate that even I was like, Ashley. I mean, yeah, he's wrong, Ashley, but don't you think you own a little of the responsibility for his actions? Don't you think you've hurt him a little bit? And I was glad to see that Ashley did acknowledge that, hey, you know what? I have said some bad things about you. I have done some things that could hurt you. And I don't know if that was the first time she ever looked at things that way, but it was great to see her reflect upon how she treated Grant. Because that happens a lot in relationships. When they finally go to ashes or they break down, it's always that one person in a relationship kind of pointing the finger at the other. But I'm gonna be honest with you. I think any relationship that crumbles outside of one that is like domestically violent, outside of something like that, I do think oftentimes it's a 50-50 split. Not much more than a 60-40 split. I think when relationships or marriages break down, outside of, like I said, domestic violence or, I won't even say cheating. I think cheating can also be something that's split. It depends on the factors. Is that one person constantly denying that other person their conjugal rights? Or did that other person kind of bait and switch where they look one way and now they're letting themselves go? I mean, it's a lot of different factors, right? But the point is, I think a lot of times when it comes to the breakdowns of relationships, it's a 50-50 split. And it was great to see that she took some responsibility, though not much, right? But yeah, Grant starts to dig into her saying, he was hurt. The things that she was saying about him, I was one point where Ashley said, why did the universe give her such a piece of S? Like, if you were a sensitive man, and I do believe that Grant is more sensitive than he allows people to see. And it often comes out when it, comes out. But hearing that from Ashley just broke him down into pieces. And I'm glad he brought that up. I really am. Now, Grant chose to leave the island alone. And I was so distraught by that, I'll be honest with you, because this entire season, Grant has been locking lips, locking bodies with Natalie. So to see him basically play Natalie and leave the island by himself was very, very hurtful. I mean, I looked at it from a perspective of if my daughter was on national TV giving her body and soul to Grant like she was, Natalie, and then Grant chooses to leave by himself, I would be very upset as a father, as a brother. Okay? I just would be. I would say, why would you lead my daughter on that way if you had no intentions of being with her? And trust me, Natalie was not far from that bonfire because they have to keep them close in the event that that person chooses to leave the island with them. So you could just imagine the producers going to Natalie saying, hey, Grant chose to leave by himself. Trust me when I tell you this. It wasn't shown, but Natalie had to have broke down because she had fallen in. I would say she had fallen in love with Grant. I really would say that. But you know how I said that Grant won the initial part of their back and forth when he was like really digging into her, making her realize that her actions were also hurtful? He was digging into her. He was getting her. But boy, let me tell you, Grant broke down like none other when Ashley revealed the big bomb. Man, she revealed that she wanted to leave the island with Danny. Now, when she says this, Grant almost has like I don't know what to call this, a man breakdown, if you will. I mean, it was very surprising to see how visibly shaken. That's the best way I can describe it. He was visibly shaken when he heard that Ashley is not only leaving the island, because I think he would have been fine if she would have chosen to leave by herself. But when she chose to leave with Danny, it broke him. It broke him. I think it was regret because he actually wanted to leave with Natalie, but he wanted to be respectful to Ashley, and he chose not to. I think it was, I think that hurt him. And I think also the idea that there was going to be another guy sleeping with his girlfriend. Because I don't think that Grant is what was 100% over Ashley. I think Grant seems to be one of those guys who he's going to be attracted to the woman that's in the room. Okay, if he has a girlfriend in Minnesota and he's in Vermont, he's going to find love in Vermont. But when he goes back to Minnesota, he's going to forget about the girl in Vermont. That's who Grant is, essentially. This is why when Ashley was on the other side of the island, he fell in love with Natalie. But at that bonfire, you got the sense that Grant wanted to reconvene and bring their relationship back together. I will say one final bit about Grant. When he was digging into Ashley and letting her know how he felt, it was so sincere. And the reason I say that is because he was shaking. I never seen somebody so passionate about being a bad boyfriend. I mean, it's like, Grant, you have no leverage here. From the moment you stepped onto that island, you knew exactly what time it was, exactly what you were going to do. And Ashley brought up a great point. She said, Grant, you know for a fact that basically every relationship you've been in, you've been a cheater. Like, you cheated on every girl you've ever been with. And Grant's rebuttal was very respectable. He said, hey, this is the energy that you fed me as I entered this island, as if you knew I would mess up. And I didn't really like this, but it was okay for the moment. He's essentially projecting, saying the reason why I did what I did is because I knew that you knew, or I knew that you thought I would cheat no matter what. So I cheated. It's like, no, Grant, that's not how that works. But it's great for the moment because it keeps Ashley at bay until she can recalculate her response. But no, Grant was going to cheat no matter what. It could have been with Ashley, from my understanding, was a good girl. She never cheated on him. And yet Grant still cheated on her. So Grant, that's just Grant's personality. Okay? Now, I did do my due diligence. I checked their Instagrams, and Ashley is seemingly having fun. Okay? She doesn't seem to be in a strong or a serious relationship with Danny. There's even at least 2 posts, and I did count. There's 2 posts where she's with Danny and the other guy, forget his name, but she references those 2 as her 2 boyfriends. And that tells me that they're not that serious. I do believe there's been intercourse, but I do not believe that Danny and Ashley are in an exclusive relationship. Now, as far as Grant is concerned, Grant is clearly single, maybe. You know what I mean? I don't know. He doesn't have any post with any girls, right? He doesn't have any posts necessarily. But he does have this one video where he's saying this hot girl or his gym crush, that's what he labeled her as. He says his gym crush just asked him to spot her. And then he asked her to spot him. And then he ends the post by saying, should I tell her about the show? Or do you think she's seen the show? So I'm not sure if that was like a little flirty thing or if that's actually a girl that Grant is dealing with. But that was the only video of her on his entire Instagram. So I'm not sure that Grant is in a relationship necessarily. But what you can find on Grant's Instagram is videos with his daughter, which I thought was amazing to see a father with his daughter. And I couldn't help myself but wonder, hey, Grant, do you want your daughter to be with a guy like yourself? That's the big question that aids a lot of men. Do you want your daughter to have the kind of guy that you are? Because if so, Grant, that means that your daughter will be with a guy who is impulsive, who lacks the ability to be faithful to your daughter. Do you really want that? And I think every good father, contends with that particular question. Do I want my daughter to be with a guy like myself? Right? But anyway, great relationship. I'm lying. The next couple, this one was all fireworks. Tayler and Tayler. Now, if you don't know, Tayler has essentially fallen in love with a new person on the island. And man, let me tell you, you want to see a woman scorned? Look no further than Tayler. Tayler came to that bonfire with her nails out. Now, when Mark gives them both the opportunity to talk with one another, you're thinking it's going to come from a point of passion or a space of passion. But no, this was from a space of calculation, because Tayler brings out a note and reads the note verbatim to Tayler. And boy, is she going for his marbles, okay? She's trying to break this guy down. And a part of me said, I'm happy that you found all these things, Tayler. But another part of me said, this is exactly why Tayler needs to leave this relationship. A lot of the things that Tayler said about Tayler were very hurtful. And you can tell that she knows Tayler well enough to know what would hurt him. She said some things that ultimately reduced Tayler to tears. And I say, you know what? This is probably why Tayler has chosen to maneuver and move the way that he has, because Tayler is a she-wolf, man. She is trying to destroy this man because she is hurt. But all that goes away because I'm Team Tayler while she's talking until I remember one big fact. It is that for the past year, Tayler has supported Tayler in every possible way. She's provided him sexual services by way of being his girlfriend. She's paying for the mortgage. She's paying for the groceries. And I say, you know what, Tayler, you're right. Everything you've said, you're right. He is not a good boyfriend. He's not a good boyfriend. He should not be hopping into another relationship until he figures out what he wants to do. And that's when I'm back Team Tayler. You know, I love Tayler. Tayler has represented himself very well on the show. Even though he fell in love with Kay, he never had intercourse with her. And that to me tells me he's disciplined. He's respectful, not only of Tayler, but he's also respectful of his new girlfriend. I thought that was pretty cool. Kay, I'm talking about his new girlfriend. Then once Tayler is done, she chooses to leave the island by herself, which I thought was the perfect decision. I didn't think her going with Yemen was the right thing to do. Even though they had a physical connection, I didn't think that made a lot of sense to leave with him necessarily. But then Tayler goes on to voice to both Tayler and Mark that he plans to leave with Kay, which I thought was the perfect decision. And then once Tayler leaves the set, the bonfire, Kay comes out. And when I say that Kay comes out with the biggest smile on her face, I said that is who Tayler needs to be with because she's happy. She's in high spirits. And that's probably why Tayler ultimately decided to leave with Kay, because Kay is happy. And I said to myself, maybe this is what a lot of women need to pull from this particular relationship. Oftentimes, a man will go where the peace is. Okay, I'm not sure if you caught that, but a man will go where the peace is. You know, think about it. Should he be in a relationship with, or should a man want to be in a relationship with a woman who is constantly berating him and basically holding this measuring stick next to his head saying, you're not good enough? Or do you want to be with somebody who loves you and likes you and appreciates you for you, no matter what stage you're at? And when Kay came out, that's exactly what I got from her. Someone who was happy to be around Tayler, not someone who was around Tayler until he matured into what she wanted. And I said, that is why Tayler is deciding to leave Tayler and go home with Kay, which he did. And they admitted that it didn't make sense. They admitted that there was a lot of question marks in that particular situation. But they also understood that if their connection was real, no matter what was coming their way, they would be able to overcome it. And I really love seeing that. But again, I cannot act like I can't sympathize with Tayler, considering that she's been with this man for an entire year, despite the fact that he's not contributing financially. I felt that very difficult to, I couldn't necessarily side with Tayler in that regard. But I will say this, when she gets into another relationship, she has to consider her standards and realize that she has a certain standard. Yeah, so that was that, man. I really enjoyed both of them. I thought that they both went through a very awesome character arc. I do believe 100% that Tayler went through this entire process without intercourse, which I respect her for. I think Tayler did the same thing. So I respect them both. I love how they handle each other in a moment where they ultimately decided to go their own ways. They were, and one thing that I do want to point out at their bonfire, they were able to talk in such a passionate way. It was so passionate that you almost got the sense that they wanted to leave together. But I think their egos got in the way. All right. I think Tayler had already seen enough of him with Kay that it was just no way that she was going to be able to leave with Tayler. And I think Tayler had heard enough from Tayler in terms of being berated to her friends. He said something about that. He said, I did not like the way that you talked about me to other people, let alone other guys. So I think that was really hurtful to Tayler, to the point where he decided he had to leave with Kay. Okay. And then in the last relationship, I want to first take a moment to just congratulate these two, because they did the impossible. You know how difficult it is for two good-looking people here to go through an entire season of Temptation Island and never do anything that's disrespectful. I will say, of the two, Alexa went through the most in terms of uncertainty, because there were many times where Lino would talk about being tempted, or he would bring up the past where Alexa had a second boyfriend. There were many times that he brought those things up in the Bonfire, and it was really just edited material. Like, really, Lino spent most of his time talking about Alexa, but whoever did the video editing, they realized that this would get the biggest response out of Alexa. So it was kind of irresponsible, because technically they could have broke these two up. I mean, it was a lot of times where Lino was showing so much respect for Alexa, but it was like these few clips that they showed Alexa about, or where Lino was kind of doubting the situation. And that doubt created even more doubt in Alexa. And, had things just gone a slightly different way, Alexa could have just, crashed out and say, hey, he doesn't trust me, or he doesn't believe, da. While the entire time Lino was buying rings, or buying a ring for Alexa, he's doing all these things because he really loves Alexa. But I'm not sure they were responsible in showing him the right clips. But I get it. Their relationship was so streamlined, so boring, that you had to find something juicy to use. Otherwise, it would just be a foregone conclusion. But as you probably can tell, Lino decided to leave with Alexa, and Alexa decided to leave with Lino. And I was just so happy. I said, you know what? They've proven me wrong. Not only did they get through Temptation Island, they didn't just survive. Because a lot of couples, they'll make it to the end, but one of them kissed somebody, one of them flirted too much. Like, I can't tell you a legitimate person in which these two crossed the line with. Yes, Alexa liked, what's his name? Gino, right? Yes, she found him attractive. But there was no point where I thought Alexa would shack up, hug, or kiss Gino in a disrespectful way. Never. And yes, Lino was attracted to the one young lady. I forget her name at this point. But he never did anything disrespectful to, hurt Alexa. So, you have that. You got to consider that. But the greatest part happens after the Bonfire is over, because you think that Lino and Alexa are about to just walk off, get into the truck, the SUV, and just drive off. But no, there's this separate section, beautiful green area. It has flowers everywhere, and this is the place where Lino proposes to Alexa, and she breaks down and she cries, and it's the most beautiful situation ever. And there was several times during this moment where I said to myself, as a father, this is what you want to see for your daughter. You want to see that there's a man who can go through Temptation Island and still respect her. Lino was on an island with at least 12 very attractive women. And not once did he kiss a woman or hump a woman, dry hump. He didn't do anything disrespectful. He was extremely respectful to Alexa the entire time. Yes, he had doubts, but that's because Alexa put those doubts there. All right. Alexa had 2 boyfriends when they first started their relationship. So, of course, Lino has some doubts. He has some questions. But, boy, Temptation Island solved all of it. And it even served as a slight bit of proof that Temptation Island isn't this reckless show where they take these people from these relationships and put them in front of hot singles. Well, no, actually, it's a show that puts people to the test and allows the other person in a relationship to see how their spouse would react around hot singles. And I am happy to report both Alexa and Lino passed the test. I mean, I was watching the end where he proposes to Alexa as if this was a video game, like the ending credits of a video game, where, they went through all these challenges. They get to the end, they beat the final boss, and you get this really cool story. And this story is Alexa and Lino get to go on and live happily ever after. So I'm very happy to see these two make it through. And I hope that other people will use their blueprint when they come onto the show and say, hey, we can be like Alexa and Lino, even though they were tempted, even though they found other people attractive. Like I said, Alexa was really, really digging Gino from a friendship perspective. Yes, Lino was really attracted to the one young lady, but they respected each other's, heart, if you will. And they ultimately did not do anything that could hurt the other person. Okay, but yeah, great season. I cannot wait until the next season of Temptation comes out. I will be doing the exact same thing because I love watching Temptation Island. It's my favorite show, one of my favorite dating shows, and it's on Netflix, so I have no excuse not to see it. But again, I do apologize for the late upload. life has been happening. Yeah. So with that being said, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this recap. If so, throw a like on the video, and I'll see you soon. Peace.